I've heard that the best amount to aim to grow by week after week is 4%.
Your permission is like to raise your standards
4%
and
might not seem like a lot,
life.
but over
really
time,
hit the jackpot
4%
by most of the world's standards, even though most of you think it's still not enough. What's going to make things magnificent on your terms, not somebody else's terms?
But if you're on an awakening journey and you have recognized that those are there, you have taken the most crucial step to get out of that, which is to become aware that it's actually happening.
This is your last chance. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. If you're new here, welcome. I'm so glad that you found your way here and you're in for a treat, because here we are sharing the top tips, hacks, and tools that our community of conscious women mothers have found to really work to make a difference in how they parent and how they can keep their calm and cool even when their kids are driving them crazy. Each week, I interview guests who are bulletproof moms, badass women running their own businesses on the leading edge of consciousness, who are here to support people in getting the skills, knowledge, and tools they need to put into practice what it is to walk their talk and be conscious spiritual women in the world. Our topics range from optimal nutrition to mindset hacks to tantra and everything in between. If there's a topic or an expert you'd like to see interviewed, drop me a line on my Facebook page, and I'm happy to see if we can arrange that. Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people. Remember, if we talk too slow, you can always speed us up. I know I love to do that, and without further ado, here is our next guest. Hello and welcome to the Joygasmic Life podcast. Today's guest is Karen Camerato, and she is a specialist in helping women overcome the grief from child loss. So this video is for you if you've ever had a traumatic experience around losing a child, either a miscarriage or after postpartum, and if you've dealt with extreme sadness, hopelessness, anger, guilt, or a fear of never feeling happy again after an experience like that, or just in your life in general, or some other traumatic experience, this call and this audio will be helpful for you in that. So looking forward to welcoming Karen shortly, and I'm so glad to have you here today with me. Thank you.
I'm just getting into the more spiritual woo-woo side of things, like in the last couple years, so I'm not as evolved as some of the people. I love it. Great. Yeah, I mean, we're all at different places in our journey in terms of what sort of concepts and ideas we wrap our head around, right? So while you're an expert in helping people deal with grief, maybe from a much more practical point of view in terms of what they need to do, other people might be more practiced in other areas, maybe more spiritual, right? And what I love, things talk to different people. Exactly. Yeah, and while spirituality was really helpful for me in my journey, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right answer for other people. So I like to showcase different views. Now, I wanted to check in. Do you want to talk specifically around like loss of child grief, or with the current world situation, COVID stuff? Is there anything that you want to touch in there that maybe wasn't part of what you're? So something I really didn't mention in the email back to you, or the message back to you, was, and this is just really coming up, is my worry about people that are losing their in-person support systems right now because they can't go. Like either their meetings are canceled, or their best friends or family that they would normally get together with. Right. It's their way of seeing them is interrupted. So I'm concerned about it, and I just want to make sure everybody understands that, they still have different ways to seek out and find an alternate means of support. So it's just not to cut off and be totally isolated with no help. There's times where isolation feels good and you need it. Yeah. But it has to be balanced with, getting some interaction with another caring human being. Yeah, there's so much that happens in that in-person interaction in terms of like our oxytocin and our hormones and our feeling of like, oh, this person really cares about me, and like so much that's offered in hugs. And so you're thinking like specifically women who have recently lost a loved one, and then now this is all happening, and they've gone into some sort of like social isolation. Yeah, isolation. There we go. So my main client is a mother that's lost a child, but a lot of are the concepts applied towards anybody that's going through deep grief and, recent especially. Yeah, yeah. And do you work with people who had like troublesome miscarriages as well, or is it more like postpartum? Some people who have had miscarriages and stillbirths are drawn into my circle, and the main group of people that I serve are people that have had a loss of a child that came home and grew to a certain age. So I feel like I'm 55 years old, so I feel like I'm attracting people that are my age mostly. So that can be a lot of people that are losing adult children, 20 something. There's so much suicide and drugs, and it's just constant all the time. So that seems to be the main, the people that hang around me the most. But my group, I have a group of like 550 people, and it's a mixture of everybody, but it's not mostly miscarriages or stillbirth. Got it. It's sort of like later in life when they've mothers who've already put lots of time and energy and effort into their children, and then losing. Right. Yeah, I don't know if you got a chance to listen to the Deep End of Mom Guilt, which is one of a chapter from a book that I've written that is around. It's a really poignant story from my life around a moment where I decided that I wasn't going to be one of those teens or early 20s that caused my mom that challenge, because I had been really wrestling with mental health and suicidal ideation type stuff. And it feels really poignant that we're here today. I sort of get to see the other side of that in some way. Yeah, I'm so glad that whatever it was that helped you to make a change, get help, whatever it was, I'm so glad you did that, because the other side of it is so heartbreaking, to just see these people. And guilt is a huge thing. It's just a huge thing no matter what the situation is, how old the child was, how they died. That's what moms do. They take on, everything's their fault, even when it's not. So, and I did lose a child, so it's been a really long process for me to get to where I am right now. And, my message is that it doesn't have to take this long. That, it just takes taking some small steps that eventually add up to, a major transformation in your life if you let it. Yeah, and if you know what those steps are, right? If you have somebody who's walked through that journey ahead of you and goes like, these are the things that were really effective for me. These are the things that people told me over and over and over again. And when I finally started doing them later, then they were actually effective in terms of helping. Right. Yeah. Well, what's tricky? Well, everybody's steps can be different depending on, what the situation is or whatever. But something that's really strange that I have noticed in this journey of really starting to talk to all these women, and I've been doing this for a couple years now, and just that in a way, like, moms, they want to feel better, but maybe they really don't want to feel better, because again, the guilt comes in to where they feel like somehow it's a betrayal to their child, because they're moving on, they're finding happiness. That that everyone talks about the first time they laughed after their child died. It's just like, I can't believe I just laughed. It's not just like your normal, yes, I want to get better. Like in any other situation where you want to grow, or you want to feel better. It's just so complicated. Yeah. So what are the things that you hear from moms who are in that sort of that phase of like, I'm not sure if I want to get better, or I feel guilty around the idea of feeling better after my child's passed? Like, what are some of the things you hear from people over and over again? Just the extreme sadness way. And they're looking at me, and I'm saying, and I really want my message to be, yes, it can get better. They're saying, well, maybe it can for you, or maybe it can for that person, but not for me, because my relationship with my child was different, and my child was special, and, all of that. And then there's a lot of negative examples out there. I mean, if you think about if you watch a movie and you think about a mother that's lost a child, I mean, a lot of times it's a tragic type figure, and, they are never happy again. And, Facebook, there's tons of groups for this, tons and tons of groups. Huge. Like, I'm talking there's 50,000 people in these groups, right? Wow, yeah. And new people come into the group, and I see this so often, and they'll ask the question, please tell me it gets better. It's been a month for me, and I just cannot handle this pain. Please just tell me that it gets better. And these other people are super reluctant to just come out and say, yes, it gets better. I mean, some people come flat out and say, it never gets better. Sorry, it never gets better. And then, other people will, they'll hold back, and they'll filter it with, well, it changes, and, you learn to live with it, and, And so I just know from my own experience, and I loved my child, so it's not that I didn't love him, and that's how I was able, but I just feel like my push forward has been wanting to do something for his memory. And if I'm just a tragic figure who can't get out of bed, what does that really do for him? What does that, how is his memory preserved in that way? It's a terrible feeling to think about that. Yeah, then his legacy is like his mom's sorrow indefinitely. And you're like, is that really the legacy that you want to leave? I didn't lose Alex, but there was another child that died who was the same age, who I'd met. And that was sort of my like wake up moment where like I mentioned in the podcast that I recorded. And so it was like, I didn't personally lose my child, but I had to come face to face with what it was to lose a child through somebody else's experience. And that was enough for me to be like, holy shit, and like totally reformed my life and was like, whoa, like I have to do something different with my life. I have to find a purpose. I have to find meaning. And like that experience was like, it was such a shake up. Just like, I have to find some meaning to get me through this. And that meaning was like becoming a better mom and like fixing what was going on in my brain so I could be that better mom, And I do see a lot of people that. That's such a great story. Yeah, I do see a lot of people who sit in misery with whatever their issue is for, Mommy Needs Vodka is like a great example. It's like a Facebook page, like, no offense to them, like, it's also really hilarious and good, but, like, but it's like a whole page, like, I'm in suffering and I'm going to stay that way. And there's not a lot of support within those groups of, like, and it can get better. It could be better than where it is, The other day, I was at a workshop and somebody expressed a really traumatic thing that had happened to them. And the first person who jumped up was like, I understand. I totally had that experience. It never gets better. And I was like, well, with that attitude, like, it's not. Straight up. Like, if you walk into it with the attitude that it's never going to be better, good luck finding the inner resources. Good luck finding the experiences to do that. That may not come across as the most compassionate thing, but at the same time, like, is living the rest of your life in pain and suffering because of one thing that happened, one really huge, one really impactful, one really like gut wrenching, challenging thing. Like, is that really going to change the entire trajectory of your life so that you're like, Whereas I have seen. There's another lady that I'm going to interview in a couple of weeks, I think, who was a client of mine for a while, who also works with women who have lost children. And I was like, I had no idea that was a thing until I encountered her because I never lost a child, right? But for people to know that that's a whole subgenre where women who have had this experience are now helping others, like, wow, yeah. Well, it's hard to make sense of it any other way than trying to make something good come out of it. Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, you said that, the thing about these traumatic things happening to people. Yeah. And it's not just child loss. It can be anything. A lot of moms are diagnosed with PTSD because of what they've seen, what they've experienced. And so that has led me to learning about PTG, which I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's basically like something that can happen that can come from PTSD, and it's post-traumatic growth. So I think a lot of times people don't know about it. They don't know it exists. Yeah, isn't it awesome? I know. And I just feel like the idea of it, just introducing the idea that lets people know. I mean, I've had moms say to me, I have PTSD, like, that's going to be my life now. I have PTSD forever. And the tricky part about working with these people is that, you do have to be compassionate while you're trying to give the message of what's available. And that's why when I found this, it's a whole, written by these two doctors that, came up with the idea and did a lot of research. And, that it's not only possible, like, it really happens, and it's, scientifically proven, these 5 areas of your life that you can grow in because of surviving a traumatic incident. So, yeah, and both you and I and thousands of people are the experience of that. I think a lot of coaches get into their professions because they've had a challenge, somebody helped them overcome it, and they're like, I need to help other people overcome it. And that's, but the concept of post-traumatic growth is just like, oh, wonderful. It doesn't mean, you're stuck in stress disorder for the rest of your life. You can go, yes, I had trauma. Exactly. Yes, it's in the past. It's not a. I will send you the name of the book and the authors so that you can have that. It's because it is a really great resource for a lot of different types of people. Yeah, thank you. And I'll make sure that gets into the show notes afterwards for anybody else who's wanting to read more about that. So what are, you're helping women who are dealing with extreme sadness, hopelessness, anger, guilt, fear of never feeling happy again. What are some of the things that you encourage people to start with? Like, what are some of those basics? If people haven't tried them, try this. Well, when I really sat down and looked at what helped me, I realized that one of the things that helped me was telling my story. And this is like, I'm talking telling your story over and over again. It can be the same story, but you just have to keep telling it either to the same person or to the guy in the grocery store, just whoever it is it helps with the acceptance piece. You're forming a story that becomes a part of your life. And the story can actually grow and evolve. And of course, like, mine has definitely changed since those first days. But to me, that was huge. And then just finding the gratitude that you can feel for things that you have in your life, just every day. You really take a whole new look at, well, I lost that, but look what I still have. And it's pretty powerful. And then the third thing is taking action in memory of your child. So even if you can't find the strength to do the things that you want or need to do, if you say, well, I'm going to do it for Nick, even if it's, I'm going to take a shower for Nick. In those early days, getting out of bed and getting to a shower is hard, So, but then as time goes on, the actions that you're taking are getting bigger and more meaningful all the time. Wow. Yeah. Oh, my heart just feels so sad for like the moment. I know, and I hate that the subject matter that I cover is so sad and depressing. And so then there's going to be plenty of people that listen to your podcast that have not experienced this.
Yeah.
So I want to say that I'm just a normal person, and so if you come across somebody that has this experience, that they're still normal people, and they still need to talk and, not be treated like they're a scary, people look at us like, ooh, we're the worst example of the worst thing that, we're the example of the worst thing that can happen to you as a mom, and so I just try to educate people on the types of things that people need and the things that they don't need to hear.
Yeah, let's just do that. When I saw that in your email, I was like, oh, that's juicy. It's like there's things they do need to hear and things that they really don't need to hear. I want to hear those are firsthand from you.
Okay, so this is things that have come to me. Some of these things I haven't experienced, and then it's amazing sometimes the things that people say, and I'm just like, did they really say that? But one thing is just the simple question of how are you? It's obvious that they're probably not good. So even if you qualify it with just how are you doing today? I know this must be the hardest thing you've ever had to go through, but how are you doing today?
Yeah.
And another thing that people tend to do is comparing, like, oh, I know just how you feel. I lost my mom last week. Or, even, I swear, I hear this, like, oh, I lost my dog. And all of that is very painful. And it just depends on, what each person's perspective is. But when you're talking to a mom who's lost a child, it's not helpful to compare any kind of loss. Rather than filling up the silence with awkward, weird things to say, it's better just to be silent. It's okay to just be silent and be there. To be there is the thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering if some of the nonviolent communication is like, I'm imagining you're feeling really sad right now. Like it's safe to feel sad. I'm here to listen to whatever you have to share.
It feels like common sense, but if you haven't really experienced anything like this, you fall into the cliches that you're just used to hearing. Oh, he's in a better place, or what? Now I'm just forgetting what the other cliches are, but just
you'll get over it.
Things that you're used to hearing. You'll get over it. At least you have other children. Like so many things, and that was me. Before this happened to me, I would have been the person to say, if you need anything, let me know.
Right.
But now I know. Now I know the people that made the biggest impact and were the biggest comfort to me were the people that just kind of zoomed in and just did what needed doing and sat with me and took over, basically. In the beginning, took over, but definitely took over the responsibility for the relationship and for the the contact. And I tell my mom so often, unfortunately, if it's important that you have contact with other people. And unfortunately, you've got to remember that they're scared of us in a way. They don't know what to say. They think they're going to make you cry. And so instead, they stay away. And so it is, I try to tell them that it's our responsibility. Let's reach out. Let's tell them what we need. But that's easier said than done. So the true friends and the ones that people talk about when I ask what, who helped you the most, it was the ones like what I described. They just keep showing up, keep calling, keep that relationship connected.
Yeah, I can totally see that. It's like mothering the mother, right? It's like probably other women coming in and just being like, whatever you need right now, we're just going to take care of all of those things. Go have a shower, honey. Like that's what you need right now. And people be empathic to the degree where it's like, these are the things that I would want in that situation. Not necessarily things you want to hear, but the things that like your body needs, that your soul needs.
Yes, so beautiful. Exactly what you just explained is so true. And I will say, those are the people you remember. I remember those people. It's been 24 years for me. And I still can see their faces. I can still see them like zooming around my house and cleaning and doing dishes and feeding me. And you just remember those things.
Yeah. When you say that, I'm like, it's almost like having a baby, like the kind of care and nurturing that you would want when you have a baby. It's like losing one.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to go that right now, but it is. It's like in terms of the actions, it's like all of a sudden you're not capable of taking care of yourself, and you need that kind of help from the people around you.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just harder. I think it's harder to support someone in that just because it's such a hard thing to be around, and you just sometimes feel so inadequate because there's nothing to say, or you can't figure out what to say. Yeah. So,
are there any things that you found that are effective to say, or to do? I mean, you said to do, but just wondering if
what people I loved was hearing stories about Nicholas. Somebody coming and telling me, last week when we were at baseball practice, Nick did this. Or his teacher telling me about an art project that he finished. Like, you love to hear those stories, especially the ones that you didn't know about. But, just any memory that someone else has of the person that you love. It's so, oh gosh, it might make us cry, but it really feels good to hear it. To know that other people are remembering them and it's not just us.
Maybe sometimes there's this perception that the mother who's lost the child is like the only one grieving, or the only one who really understands the loss, whereas there might be, especially in adult children, there might be like best friends, or there might be partners or whatever who are also grieving in that, and that loss can bring people together. I'm curious about, like, you're obviously supporting mothers. I'm curious if you can speak briefly about the impact of losing a child on a partnership, on like a parent relationship.
Like, oh, you mean like if you lose your, I don't know what you mean.
So like mom and dad have both lost a kid because they're together and they both, like this.
On the relationship, sorry. Yeah. So it's so complicated, and you hear stories all the time about marriages that just ends because of it. And I actually think it is true that the divorce rates are higher among those couples because everyone grieves so differently. Men and women grieve so differently. And a lot of times what I hear is that the men just want to see their wife acting normal again, happy again, and they think somehow it's their job to fix that, and there's no way that they can. So the best advice that I have on that is just that each person needs to seek their own help. And in some cases, it's beautiful. They come together and they do share the loss, and it brings them closer. I've definitely heard of that. But, we can't read each other's minds. We don't always know what they need. So I think it's important for us to tell what we need, and then also to seek things that make us feel better and not just count on someone else fixing us, because they can't. They're not in a position to do it.
Yeah, that growth and that healing really needs to come from inside. I remember in healing, it was like I had to learn how to hold myself when I was really sad. And then, other people could really hold me, or I was able to receive that holding when I was really sad. But I had to hit my own bottom and be like, okay, and I can be present and really sad at the same time.
Yeah, well, you do have to, let yourself feel feelings. And so many of us take on ways to avoid the feelings. And so there's a lot of like overing behavior that goes on, over drinking, over eating, over being busy, overworking. And it's just like a classic way of trying to avoid dealing with these feelings that are just beyond anything you've ever felt before. But the people who allow it to happen and give it time and space, they're the ones who are able to move forward quicker. And, that's just the way it is. But, like I like it when people will say, I'm going to give myself this afternoon on the couch to cry and just be miserable. But because, tomorrow I'm going to go back to my routine, and I'm going to go to work, and I'm going to take care of these kids or do whatever. And I think if you give yourself the time, then those unexpected grief bursts will be less.
Oh, for
sure. Happen.
Yeah.
But something huge has happened in your life, and you've got to allow for that.
Yeah. I know I used to set a 5-minute timer. I death grief, a whole other ballgame. But like for me, it was like a 5-minute timer. One day I actually like curled up under my desk at work and just like curled under my desk and just cried for 5 minutes. I was like, okay, and then I'll, I have a shit ton of things to do. I'll just get back up and do it. But for 5 minutes, it's just like, see how deep that sorrow can go. Because a lot of people, I think, it really is like a soul shaking experience. And so if you're like surface crying, there's sort of like, oh, I feel sad, but then there's like, I'm destroyed by my sadness. There's like a whole other.
You need to have that. You need to be able to have that destruction feeling. I had a mom who had to go back to work right away, which so did I. So I had to make money. But she had a file that she would carry around with her whenever she needed to get away. So she would go pick up the file and leave the office and act like she had to take it somewhere. And then she could go and, disappear for a little while with her file. And then when she was able to, have her moments of crying, at that time is what it was, and then she could come back. And, everybody, of course, around you knows that you're sad. So those first few days of going back to a routine, whether it's back to work or back into, if you have other children, the dance lessons, the baseball, just the school stuff, whatever it is. Yeah. Those first few days are really hard because everybody's wanting to acknowledge you and your loss, and so it's very emotional. But it's also very cleansing too.
Yeah. To let that, let that grief come out as it happens. Wow.
I know. I'm sorry to your listeners. I really don't want them to be sad. I want them to be grateful that, just a little reminder that, life is really good most of the time. People are really good most of the time. And so just to be there for those that you know that have had a loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, something like, hey, I don't know what to say right now, but maybe I could come over and just cook you dinner one day this week, or just bring it over for you,
Yeah.
That seems to me like something that would be helpful based on what we've talked about. Because sometimes, like, I remember it was like feeding myself was the most challenging thing. It's like I didn't want to eat, I didn't want to make food, I didn't want to, let me just cook food for you and your family, especially for the guys, something like that.
It's huge. Those meals, it seems like such a cliche, just everybody brings food, but it's needed. It's so needed. There's all kinds of people in your house, and you've got to feed them while they're sitting there with you. And I remember somebody even brought in like a huge bag of tissues, like facial tissues, so that because everybody was crying. And I still remember that, that they did that and they thought to do that. I was just so struck by that. What worries me now, though, is, somebody just sent me a message in their town that a soldier had died somewhere, and so they were coming back, and now you don't even have the support that a funeral brings, because you can't bring people together because of the virus.
Right.
So it's so sad to me that that whole layer of support gets removed, and I really worry for those people so much.
Yeah. There's so some things that maybe could happen is like more contact, more phone contact, more video contact. It might take a whole.
It's gonna have to.
That's what it would have to be, because that's the sort of the closest offering that's possible. Right. Or if you're really really good friends, it's like, hey, I'm going to come live in your house for the next like 4 weeks.
Yeah, there you go.
Another person.
That's what somebody would do if you had a baby too. Like your mom would still come, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you've done like study around sort of like the healing of the brain or the healing of the emotions, like what your understanding is around that actual like process.
I mean, it goes back to what I was saying on experiencing the feelings, but then at some point having the realization and the understanding that you do get to control your feelings. What you're thinking is controlling your feelings. And I think at first, no. You aren't in any kind of control. It's just completely out there. But then once you get to a point where you are functioning on a low level, but still functioning, that's a good time to introduce the idea that your thoughts control your feelings. And if you're feeling bad, maybe it's time to try to think about thinking a different thought. And that's why, I want to just be an example to people that I know you think this is never going to get better. And I know, people don't want to live. They don't want to do this, and they're just in such denial and just fight the idea that it's happened.
Yeah.
But when you can get to the point where you realize it's not changing, and then that you can control the thoughts that you're thinking, and how you want the legacy to come out, that's when massive transformation can change. For me, like I said, it was a process. I had other children, so I just kind of tucked it away and did my job as a mom, but I was not the same bubbly, happy person. Clueless, though. I will say I was clueless. I wasn't the same person, and I always say, like, if I could have Nick back, I would go back to being the clueless person that I was. But since I can't, I want to change. I want to be a better person. And so I started with one thing, which actually sounds so corny, but I took a Zumba class. And, I'm no fitness guru or anything like that, but just getting in there, getting a break for 1 hour, being around other fun people, having upbeat music, like, for me, that was the beginning of a whole roller coaster of things that happened. And I'm not saying everybody needs to go take a Zumba class, but I'm saying everybody has a thing that they can find. And it's just a question of starting out that exploration. And now I know like how fun growth is, personal growth, and seeking all the different ways that you can feel better and get help, and like play with, help your mind think the way you want it to think. Get your mindset right. I mean, there's just so many ways. So that is just my goal, is just trying to help people connect with the thing that is going to help them start that journey.
Yeah, for sure. And when you were talking about the sensation of, like at the beginning there is like so much sadness, and then you get to a point where like there's so much sadness, the waterfall turns into a bit more of a trickle, right? But then the sadness has sort of become a habit to a certain point. The sadness has become a habit. So then it's about reforming your habits to have different connotations, and that's a huge place where mindfulness comes in, where like repatterning your brain comes in. I know from my personal experience, it was like, oh, here's my thought, and then the immediate response is like, this like gross sadness, gross feeling. And if you can catch it before that feeling gets too big, then there's an opportunity to reroute it. And it's literally like the brain pathways go, here's my memory of, I'm going to use your son's name, like, here's my memory of Nick, that equals sadness. Here's my memory of Nick, that equals sadness. And so finding purpose is like, here's my memory of Nick, that equals sadness. Oh, wait, actually, it means like new life purpose and becoming a better person. Okay, so then, so then it's like, okay, so here's my memory of sadness. Oh, the sadness is a little bit, or here's my memory of Nick, the sadness is a little bit smaller. Oh, right, Nick, like my loss of Nick equals memory of like purpose and strength in myself. And I'm maybe less bubbly, but maybe more grounded as a result, right? Whatever that might be, there's like a different person that comes out. In the same way as when we create life, it's like ourselves become different, but when we lose life, like we can't help but be changed by moments of impact in our lives. And so it's like you like remembering that you have a choice around who that person is, and that person could either be permanently sad and tragic, or that person could be, you know, sometimes sad and tragic and generally looking to improve themselves, or it could be I've come to a place where I've made such a habit of improving myself and finding meaning out of my suffering that in fact all of my suffering has some moment or meaning.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just so beautiful and so true of the journey. I wish that I had been aware of those types of tools early on,
Yeah.
but I didn't. I wasn't searching, and I had no examples of what was available to me. And so I think I would have really been able to move along much quicker if I had been open to that, or just had knowledge of it.
Yeah. I would say ditto. I would say ditto. I spent several years like wandering around being like, oh my God, like I'm just sad. This just sucks. And then sometimes I'm buoyant and then sometimes I'm sad, but the sadness is sort of like dragging. And I like to use I don't have an elastic here right now, but I like to use the metaphor of like an elastic band. And it's like, okay, so you're going to like move forward. I'm going to take positive steps forward, but it's elastic and it's stringing. So unless you're dealing with the sadness at the sort of the back end and like giving that expression and really completely letting it go, it's like, you're going to get back to that sadness really fast. Whereas when you let go of that sadness, it's like all of a sudden, oh, my new baseline of feeling is like not that empty pit of despair, but is now something that like has a little bit of hope in it. Wow, okay, well if I can live with a little bit of hope in it, it's like, oh, okay, this is what I might feel like if I'm maybe even a little bit happy, And it's like, oh, okay, well we gotta process like the hopelessness bits too.
Right. Well, and it's really a good example too of, whenever you have a huge loss, like what I did, and at the time internet wasn't really a thing. I'm so old, but I got every book on the subject, and you start reading about the stages of grief and just saying, okay, well, here's all the stages, and I'm going to check these off, and then, finally, I know that someday I'll get to this acceptance piece. And the thing with that is just the same thing. You bounce back and forth, up and down to all the different emotions and stages that are out there. And there's so many more than just the ones that they mention all the time: anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It's just, there's so many more feelings that you can have, and everybody is different. Some people go through huge amounts of anger. I never really had anger. So it's just, it really just depends on the person. Every person is so different.
Yeah, for sure. I really appreciated, this concept of legacy, like the legacy of your child. My friend and client Nola, who also works in this area, she made a whole meditation series called Sabrina's Gift, and it's the name of the daughter that she lost, right? And it's like, what is the gift that brings to your life? And you mentioned that talking about losing your dogs was like not a great example, but I would like to share a story. During one of those really challenging periods of time in my life, I call it a death wham bam thing shmam, something like that. It's like so I had a puppy that I adopted from the street, and I'd had her for about 3 months, and she got sick and died in about 4 days. My roommate brought home another puppy because she worked at a vet clinic that same week, and he got run over by a car in that same week, so it's like a week after that same thing. And then my roommate's mom, who had lived with us for several months, died that same, like the week after. So it's like 2 weeks, and I had like three major deaths, none of which I was over, and it was just like, you're like, oh, it's like getting hit with like 3 trains in a row. And I was grieving. I was so sad. Like I was sad about the puppies because that was my experience, and it was the first time I'd ever had a dog. And blah 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 blah. I know we mentioned not comparing to dogs, but when my
no, I really let me tell you one thing. I'm not saying that a dog's loss wouldn't make you grieve, because I love my dog. Don't know what I would do without my dog right now. So it's just in any loss. If you lost your dog, and I can say I know just how you feel. I lost my son. It's just, there's no comparison. Everything is different. So it's not that I don't think it's just as real. I just think when you're talking to somebody who's newly grieving, just don't say anything about any kind of loss that you've experienced. Right now, you need to just let them experience it. So, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just didn't want you to think like I was minimizing the loss of a dog, because I'm not.
Yeah, I was just thinking that you had said that, and then I was like, oh, somebody's like actually been through like a really recent, their child death experience. Like, I don't want to be the one being insensitive by sharing a story about my dog. But the point of the story was like, and actually you sharing that reminded me that there was a little girl who lived next door, and her dad ran over her dog within a couple of weeks later, and I was just like, she told me, she's like, oh, we both lost a dog, and I was like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. Like, my grief is so big. You don't even understand. You had it for like a week and a half, and blah blah blah. Right? So it's like that thing where it's like the grieving mind doesn't want comparison. It doesn't even really want sympathy. What it wants is like, it doesn't want, oh, I have a story similar to yours. It's like, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That's the worst thing that ever happened. I'm so sorry. It doesn't even want, you'll be better soon. It's just like, I'm so sorry. I got you now.
Really, just tell me how you're feeling. Talk about, say the person's name. Talk about your son. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to say anything. It's just, it can be a really beautiful experience and very memorable if somebody's able to support. I get so much from being able to support these other moms. It means so much to me.
Yeah, and I think that's a really beautiful gift, like the sort of the end of that story around the two puppies and my friend's mom was when I came home. I came home from work and she was lying on her bed just sobbing, and I was like, "What happened?" And she shared that her mom had passed, and it was incredible transformation in my life because I went from so sad for myself to so compassionate for her, and I just wrapped myself around her and I just held her, and it was like all of my sadness got like purified out of me, and all that was left was just this like divine love, just being like, "Oh babe, like I'm so sorry for your experience," like, and it was just this like absolute clarity of love and compassion and beauty, and I've never seen death the same way afterwards, because later what she told me was that her mom had a bucket list, and her mom had literally ticked every single thing off of that bucket list in the week before she passed, and including like a long train journey and volunteering in Asia and like all sorts of things. And she called her daughter the night before she passed in her sleep. She wasn't sick. She wasn't, she's like a fully healthy sort of like 50, 60-year-old woman. And she called her daughter the night before and was like, just in case anything happens, like I need you to know that I love you and you're my beautiful daughter and I'll always love you. And it was like she knew, part of her knew, and one of the things that's helped me come to terms with death was that experience, was like, wow, like clearly there was something much, much bigger than any of us at work in that moment. And for me personally, it's like when I can feel into that, it's like, oh, so we have the opportunity to take any loss as a moment of intense change, a moment of feeling those feelings and purifying any of the sadness that might have happened in our lives out of us. It's like, wow, like you have an excuse to spend, and a reason, not just an excuse, like an excuse and a reason to spend the next 3 weeks just sobbing out anything that you might be sad about. And it might not even be, your child's loss. It might be the thing that happened in grade 2 or grade 7, or when you got married and it wasn't the way you thought it would be, or whatever, right? Like whatever those things are, just like let all of that grief clear all of it out. And then when the anger comes, let all of the anger out and come through it like washed and brand new and connected to that, like, oh, like I have presence to myself in the feeling, like I've been able to, I felt all those feelings and I'm still here, I'm still alive, like I have a face, I have hands, okay, like there's still a body here, the body still needs care,
And well, a loss, a huge loss is just a huge way of prioritizing. I mean, it just knocks you into your priorities so strongly because you really remember what is important and what isn't. I've been amazed, all the discussion about the COVID-19 and online, just like a lot of fear and a lot of worries. And in my group with my moms, it's almost a non-issue. It's like we've already been through the worst thing, and so it's really puts things into perspective. And I don't know why, but for me, I have just found this time to be full of just love and creativity and focus that I haven't felt. And I just it really helps you prioritize your life.
Yeah, and it's like, does that coffee date with the person who sort of annoys me while I hang out with them, is that really a priority right now? No, 0%.
Exactly.
Scratch it.
Exactly.
No excuses needed.
Exactly.
You scratch it off. And I'd love to see more people operating from that kind of radical honesty and being like, no, that's not a priority right now. And if learning the superpower of no is one of the things that comes out of having lost a child, like, that's a gift, and there's many
things. And you don't have to remove your kindness. You don't have to remove your you don't have to be mean to people. You can make your decisions and your choices for what is good in your life, and that's I mean, I didn't tell you like the whole story of the Zumba and then this, and I mean, it was just a huge transformation. And in the end, it was getting a divorce and being able to really start taking care of myself for the first time in my life. And so a lot of gifts did come from the loss of my son. They really did. And I, like I said, if I could change it, I would, but I give him all the credit for helping me make this transformation.
Yeah, and from a sort of spiritual esoteric perspective on it, I've heard it said before that sometimes children do come in, especially like suicides, especially miscarriages and early losses, accidents, tragic accidents. It's like before the soul incarnates in life, it goes, oh, that looks like a place where I can be really helpful in my mom's life for about 7 years. Okay, I'll go do that. And it's such a, because on the other side of that, my mom's going to crack open and going to be like this spectacular woman who helps so many people because of it. And so the baby soul is like totally willing and ready to do that and is open to that journey. And it's our hanging on to the pain, to the fear, to the loss, to the grief, and getting stuck in those things that stops it sometimes from being the really beautiful gift that it can be. Because we naturally want to heal. We naturally want to feel better. We naturally want to grow. And so if we're feeling caught in grief, trust me, I know that one really well. I spent many years stuck in cycles of depression and suicidal ideation and stuck, right? And maybe I'd like to share this little gem, which was, it's called secondary gain, and I learned this through neurolinguistic programming and studying how the brain works and how to reprogram the brain, seeking to help myself and other people that I was working with. And the idea is that out of any behavior that is challenging, any behavior that we're like, I'm stuck in this, and really I shouldn't be, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day, but I seem to do it anyways, and I can't seem to stop. It's like, well, there's a gain that we're getting out of it. Not the primary gain. The primary gain is not, well, I'm negatively impacting my health by adding cigarettes to my body. I'm just choosing that as an example. Everybody can do whatever they want with their life, right? But it's a fairly common, right? And it's one of those over things that people do when they're grieving sometimes, right? Myself included in the past, yeah. And so it's like, oh, but what is the positive thing that I'm getting out of that? The positive thing I'm getting out of smoking a pack of cigarettes today is I go outside a whole bunch and I'm taking a moment to myself. Oh, okay. So can I find new and healthy ways to take a moment to myself and spend more time outside? Probably I can, but until we can see what that secondary gain is. And so for moms, as an example, who have lost a child, it's like, well, staying in sadness honors my child's life. Staying in sadness means that I'm still connected to them somehow. Staying in sadness, don't worry. Sorry, my dog's barking. Totally fine. Like staying in sadness means that I'm getting some positive result out of being sad. And so as soon as we can see those, well, not as soon as we can see those things. Once we can see those things, then we can start to go, okay, what are some of the ways that I can meet those needs, have those results in new and healthy ways, and then you can really start to get out of those patterns of stuckness and start to move into new and healthy behaviors. Because you go, oh, like it's exactly the thing of like the gift and the legacy. It's like, oh, I'm choosing to stay sad because I don't yet understand that I can honor my child's life and feel happy. What are some ways that I can honor my child's life and feel happy? It's like, well, creating an organization that supports cancer research, creating, becoming a coach that does other things, offering, not even taking on as a livelihood, but like offering support to other moms who are in earlier stages of grief than you are through other people's existing groups. Like there's lots and lots of ways to do that don't mean that you need to stay in grief in order to stay connected.
Right. And I just think you don't know. All you know is the sadness, and so you're clinging to it with all your life because you know that's the way to hold on to your child.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes all it takes is just an example or just a suggestion, that maybe there's another way to think about this. And I also say, it doesn't have to be a huge raise $1 million for cancer or do some magnanimous thing.
Yeah.
It can just be my mom's getting up and going to work every day, and she seems to be happier, and she's taking care of my sister and my brother. That's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough to just have some happiness in your life and take care of yourself. And, of course, the other things are awesome. And when you do them, they feel great.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be so complicated. It can start with just something super simple.
Yeah.
And then down the road, who's to say what can happen?
Yeah.
So, you're so right. You're so all of that you said.
Yeah, and I think some people's personalities are geared towards creating $1 million foundation, and they're already on that sort of like trajectory of thinking, and some people aren't, and that's totally fine, right? Like, planting a tree is a beautiful one, something you can see every day that's like still there with you,
Right. Yes.
Whatever that might be.
Right. Well, and I just think having that understanding that the sadness is not all that's left, the grief is not all that's left of your child.
Right.
And you are as a mom, we're the main people in charge of the legacy.
Yeah.
And so, I have a mom that, she says that her family doesn't want to talk about her daughter, that, they get very uncomfortable and they know that she gets sad every time she starts talking about it. But she said, but I just feel that that's what I want to do. And then I said, you need to just keep just honor how you feel. It's your grief and you get to handle it however you want. And then the kids can handle it however they want. But I feel like as time goes by, you keep that person in your life. If you just try to shut it all away, then that's the real sadness that can come from this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you shut it all away, it'll come back at some point. Like you can't really shut it off. And I when I teach, I say that when we take joy up here and sadness down here, when we cut off the sadness, we equally cut off the joy. We cut off the sadness and we cut off the joy, and then all of a sudden, all we're left with is like life,
Numb.
and numb. And I spent years living in numbness, but numbness is also one step away from a little bit happy. It's like to go from intense sadness to intense joy is way more challenging than going from like numbness to like, well, actually, I'm really glad the room's warm and there are trees outside my window.
Yeah.
They're pretty. They've been there for a long time. They're still there with me. Just like these little
That's the journey. That's the journey is the baby steps. No, I'm not going to expect you to jump from intense grief to, joy and extreme happiness. That's not how it goes. Because numb feels better than that sad place. Yeah. And that's kind of where I stayed. When I say that it took me too long, I just stayed in that numb place. Yeah. I just was very, very numb. And so, but then once I got a taste of what it felt to feel better than numb, then you start really grabbing for it and searching for more.
Yeah. And in order to do that, you've got a certain amount of hope, like, oh, like there's more of that somewhere, and not so much of what I've just been soaking in for many years or many months or whatever it is. And really, the journey with guidance, with support, with the correct tools, those journeys can be so much more accelerated than the sort of slow finding tools, finding support, figuring out what works, experimenting with this, experimenting with that. Oh, that didn't work. Like yoga didn't work for me because I would just be grumpy at having to follow the teacher for years and for like the whole class. I'd just be like, oh, gosh, she's telling me what to do while doing it. It's like stupid, right? For me, like covering my ears with like 15 sounds at a time and all these like positive voices telling me things, like that worked for me in a way that trying to be quiet never worked for me because I'm not so quiet as a person.
Right. Well, I mean, that's true. Everyone's different. I feel like the beginning, the very first thing that a mom or someone who's really grieving needs to do is just give themselves permission to seek something more. It's so hard. You can't. It's very hard to give yourself permission to let go of what you think is the only thing you have left of your child. And as a mom, that's our main job, is to protect our children, whether they're here or not, protect their legacy. So it's hard sometimes to give yourself permission. And so that's one of the first things that I do when I talk to these moms after they talk it out, is just to talk about giving themselves permission to seek the next step, just one. And it can all flow from there.
Yeah, and a lot of it starts with just that hope that things could be different in the future, which I really hope that this conversation has brought some of that if people are in that early stages of grief.
Oh gosh, me too. Every time I meet up with a new person that's newer to the journey, it just breaks my heart because I know what's ahead for them, and I know that it's not easy, but I also know that the potential is there to let this become a transforming moment in your life and a gift in your life if you can allow yourself to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to share sort of before we wrap up today? Any other words of wisdom?
No, I the first thing that pops in my head when you ask me that is just to tell people that whatever they're feeling, it's okay. It's normal. And, this is a situation where normal feels good. All your life, you don't want to be called normal. It's not the greatest description of a person. But in this case, you just want to go back to being a normal mom. You just want to be normal. You want things to be normal again. And so it's okay, whatever you're feeling, to just feel it. And nothing's gone wrong as far as how you process the situation, because everyone does it differently. And then, just please, if you feel the call to seek help, don't wait for it to come to you. Seek it. Just seek it. One small step. And you'll be amazed at how things can move from there.
Yeah, for sure. I look back on my journey recovering from like PTSD and all these things and my own intensity with grief, and there were a few people who just like boop, 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 like popped up at the right moment, and those people were like key in giving me the tools that I needed to then run with those tools myself and feel so much better. And for people who are listening to this, who are in the stages of grief, like if you didn't hear it already, asking for help is a good next step, right. So if people do want to get a hold of you, what are some of the resources that you have for people? What are some of the ways that they can connect with you?
Well, if they go to my website, it's risingaboveInMemoryOf.com. I have a freebie on there, which is like a planner page, and so it's an interactive thing. If they join my group, I have a hashtag of the day, and we just talk about different topics around, sometimes it's around grief, sometimes it's around child loss, and sometimes it's around personal growth, and sometimes it's totally random. But it's something different every day, and that page has other tools on there that can help you. Like, for example, today I'm going to do something like in memory of my child. And there's a place on there that allows them to just write their child's name. And then in the middle of all that is also a to-do list and a schedule, because even though you're going through grief and you have these extra things to deal with, you still have to live your life. You still have to go to doctor's appointments, and you still have to clean your house, and you still have to do things. So it's just a way to combine some healing with some normalcy. And so if they go to my website, there's a place there to ask for, give their email address, and it will be sent to them.
Great.
And then I'm on Facebook. I'm Grief Coach Karen, so they could find me there. But I love just talking to people and getting to know them. Just have heard so many amazing stories, and I'm constantly like full of hope with the human spirit. This is amazing that people can survive this, and yet they do, and they do amazing things.
Wonderful, beautiful. Oh, thank you so much, Karen. It's been such a really lovely conversation.
Thank you.
I feel like this
that was so fun.
Some wonderful
fun. I don't know. Like, people are like, yeah, it's so fun to talk about grief, and I know that it's not, but
it's not fun
to talk about grief.
It's not fun to be in grief, but it's totally fun for both of us who have moved through those journeys and are on the other side to be like, oh, here's some things that
see the journey,
and to see the journey, and to go, oh, like, and to feel of service in that. Literally, this is both of us taking our grief, going, we found some way that we can be of service through the grief that gives us both meaning, and we're like, hey, hi, will you have a conversation with me so we can both feel of more meaning? Fantastic, let's do it. And of course, I had fun.
Absolutely.
It does feel weird to say I had fun talking about grief, but we did. And that's
at the end of the day, we're all just regular people to normalize it for the people that aren't going through it so that they can support the ones that are, and let them know that, you don't have to be afraid of these people. Just be there for them. That's going to make the most difference.
It sparked a memory, like right now it's March 30th, I think, 20, maybe 31st, I don't remember.
March 31st today?
Right. It's March 31st, 2021, and like, we flew back to the U.S. just before, like March 12th. It was like just before sort of COVID went boom in the news and across the world, and we had a whole road trip planned and all this jazz. And the first couple days after, I realized, oh my God, like my summer road trip is like my 6-month summer road trip is just canceled. Like it's just not happening. I'm not meeting up with my parents. I'm not. It's like nothing like losing a child, but like the loss of my dream, right? It's just like it's not happening. And I was in shock for a couple of days. Like I was just like, I don't know what's happening, and I don't know how to dream, and I don't know what's gonna happen next. And I looked at my son, and he's like, let's go fly a kite, Mom. I'm like. And I could feel myself that we're stuck in wanting to grieve, wanting to feel sad about it, wanting to feel helpless and betrayed and like horrified at what had happened. And my son's just like, no, let's go play a kite. And we went and flew a kite for a bit, and it was like just these moments of like seeing the joy on his face and holding the kite with him and helping him throw it in the air. And it was this really poignant moment of like, oh, this is being present with joy in the midst of chaos and fear. This is being okay in this moment, even though, there's still a whole lot of stuff I have to process. There's still a whole lot of like freak out that's going to happen and some crying and like, like, oh, but in this moment, I can choose to either let that freak out stand between me in this moment, or I can choose to just put it down for a minute and really be here with him. And I mean, I'd love to sort of close on that note, because it really personifies, like, just because you have a big grief doesn't mean there can't be moments of beautiful joy mixed in with that. Just because you have big grief doesn't mean you can't feel other things along the way. And in fact, when you sort of put that grief down temporarily and let yourself be in whatever moment is happening, especially if there are other children that you've got who are still being vivacious and beautiful, it's like letting yourself be with them and letting yourself be present with them. It's not going to change that other thing that still needs time and patience and healing and love and compassion to heal, but it does honor what's happening in the moment. And I think that's super, super important. Yeah.
So exactly what I want my message to be. Perfect.
Beautiful. I love it when that works out like that. Okay. So if you are in a place of needing support and help around having lost a child, Karen is your lady to talk to. Please reach out to her if you felt resonance in this call today and this time today. And I'm holding everybody who listened to this one, who may be in that place deeply in my heart, just being like, we're here with you, even if you feel really alone right now. You got 2 people right here who are like, oh, sucks, and you'll get through it. And you don't need to get through it right now. You just be wherever you're at right now. Yeah. Aww. Okay. Well, just like say hello bye to the audience. And
okay. Well, I'm here. I love being here for people. So thank you so much for this. I know that it's important to talk about it. So I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
Remember, if you love the podcast, there's so much more on our website, bulletproofmoms.com, and we would so appreciate that you subscribe, share our podcast with your friends, and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes or wherever you're viewing this, as it helps us reach more people.
Even if I've tried to do this in the past and it's been unsuccessful, or I've given up and I felt like I could never change, I can completely change this.
Follow your breath, and you contract those intrinsic muscles. As you follow your breath, and you bring that breath all the way up to that pineal gland, and you hold your breath.
One of the most valuable concepts that I personally learned is that in order to reach the level of success, self-confidence, and prosperity that you want, you have to brainwash yourself. Yes, brainwash yourself. See, either way it goes, you're going to be brainwashed. But the question is, who's doing the brainwashing?
Hey guys, thank you so much for being on that journey with me. It's been a work of love to create such a journey, and I invite you to come and be part of the tribe, come be part of the experience, and get your full access pass so that you can see all of the things that are being created, experience all of the things that are being created. This is literally just a demo and just a toe in the ice of what is available in terms of audio and content that is highly programmable into your subconscious in your highest possibility. And so I thoroughly encourage you, if you are into personal development, if you watch this thing all the way to the end, there's clearly something here for you, and I want to have you as part of the tribe. So I love you. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the other side in the tribe.
sugar addiction and addiction in general, and she filled me with this beautiful knowledge and power that I always knew was inside me, but just needed, I think, a little bit of coaxing to come out. I can actually tell that there's been a big shift, and it's not just superficial. It's on a fundamental level. My thought processes are different, and that's such a beautiful gift, because I've been working really hard to get rid of this sugar addiction, as I'm sure a lot of people are. And you know, I lost a ton of weight, and then I hit that plateau, and there's that one thing that's super hard to beat. And thanks to Elena, I think I definitely have it. This time I'll beat the addiction to sugar.
I'm on a big mission to end family trauma in this generation, and so I'm working with conscious moms to create a powerful change where we can become bulletproof, where we have no triggers, where our children cannot touch us no matter what they throw at us, so that we can be the kind of moms that we needed and the kind of moms that we want to be for this new generation, so that we can end rape, we can end trauma, we can end neglect, we can end sexual shame, we can end consumerism, we can end screen addiction, we can end all of these things by how we choose to parent and how we show up in the world. So I invite you to be here on this journey with me, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on the other side. So get your name and email in that box and join me on this journey. It's going to be an incredible 7 days where you are guided every day to understand how to create better habits, how to not give up, and how to implement the 60-second hack to rewire your brain so that you know that no matter what's happening, you'll come back to a loving place fast. I love you. I'll see you on the other side.
Moment and your future, but also your perceptions of your past, so that you look at your past and your life and you already see all of the places where you have integrated this change and had been previously unaware of it. Thank you so much for being here today with me, and you've done great work today, not only for yourself but for our collective consciousness. I'll see you here tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful day.